Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Experience. This is part 2 of our interview with Peter Smith, and we're talking about consciousness and quantum consciousness and Life Between Lives Hypnotherapy, and it is really cool. So thanks for joining us for part 2. So, Peter, are there any current thinkers in the world today that you feel particularly drawn to?
There's a number, and we've already mentioned Michael Newton, who's changed so many lives. He's always top of my list. Nora, in my time as president of the Newton Institute, I get so many emails saying how his work has changed people's lives, and that's just from reading his books.
Yeah.
So, he's a groundbreaking, explorer and researcher into consciousness, the like of which I haven't seen elsewhere.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones that have really drawn me over the years is some work by Dr. Rupert Sheldrake.
Oh, yeah.
And he talks a lot about morphic fields, morphic resonance. He's bringing forward the knowing and the understanding that consciousness is not held in this grey matter that we're seeing inside our mind. Consciousness is actually held. And his work as a biologist as well, where he's talked about, not enough information can be carried in a flower's DNA for it to know that it should form that shape like a daffodil, which is quite unique. So there's something happening in that energy field, this transference of the morphic field of genetic memory of species. His work is absolutely fascinating. He even wrote a book, Dogs That Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home.
I always use this example.
So yeah, do you? Oh, it's a great example. He's
share it. I haven't shared it on my show. Sorry. Yeah.
He's quite an amusing guy as well, an English fellow. So I think he's doing some fantastic work. He did a really good TED talk, and it was so good that it was taken down off YouTube because I think he had a few too many home truths for the scientific community because he was speaking about where science is wrong.
So let me just fill people in. Let me fill people in on the dog experiment. So they did an experiment. Rupert Sheldrake, I'm a huge fan too, and so I'm just all chill, have goosebumps. But they had a camera trained on dogs at home, and then they had the owners going off out of range to go run errands, right? Correct me if I'm doing this wrong. They went and so they were trying to figure out when would the dogs go wait in front of the door. And so they were able to ascertain through their study methods that it was the moment that the owner decided to come home that the dogs were standing at the door, and not when they were hearing the car coming down the street.
Yeah, we have a cat here that does that too. So, I mean, this is a beautiful example of connected consciousness that comes from love.
Yeah.
Because dogs are all about unconditional love, and cats are about love as well, but they express it very different. But yeah, it's about the connectedness between not just human minds, but in the consciousness of animals as well. We're all part of a collective species. Yeah.
Rupert Sheldrake is so brave too to be. I think he works out of Oxford or he's a badass. He's a total badass, and people respect him, and he's doing just mind-blowing work. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, apart from him, there's some guys again with a lot of credibility that have stepped up and risked their careers. Bruce Lipton is another one, The Biology of Belief. I mean, he proved scientifically and clinically in his little lab with his petri dishes that we adapt to our environments, and it's our environments that create who we are, not our DNA. There might be some dispensation towards certain conditions that are inherent in us, but we actually create our own realities, and he's looked at that at the cellular level.
Totally.
So Gregg Braden
his stuff is epigenetics, right? Bruce Lipton.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
Another one is The Divine Matrix by Gregg Braden, and he talks about that. He talks a lot about that infrastructure of energy. That's a great book, and he's tapping into a lot of the ancient wisdom that's coming through as well. But an old favourite of mine is Erich von Daniken, and
Oh, yeah.
the Chariots of the Gods, which was published back in 1968. And I remember going to see the Chariots of the Gods movie in the 70s, and, was God an astronaut? I think it was the byline.
Oh,
And
there's a movie of Chariots of the Gods?
yeah, it's really old now. Maybe it's on YouTube somewhere, but
Oh,
it
cool.
was just fascinating. And he went through all of the ancient cultures, and he pulled out the all of the extraterrestrial carvings and all of that. And he's in his 80s now,
Yeah.
and I had the great opportunity to be up at the Nexus conference as a speaker when he came over as the keynote. And I actually got to shake his hand, probably 45 years after I first saw the movie, and yeah, got to have a little chat with him, which was just wonderful.
Well, isn't he the pioneer of the work that's really starting to blossom now? There's like a lot of stuff on Gaia. There's a lot of stuff on ancient aliens, and all of those ancient astronaut anthropologists and archaeologists. I mean, that is such a jam that I can really get into. But it's really blooming now.
Yeah, he was 40 years ahead of all these other guys. And, I remember when he spoke at Nexus, and he got up and he said, excuse me if I stumble over any words, English is my fourth language. So, yeah.
Have you downloaded any other languages besides English?
No, not at this time.
I really want to do that.
Only Australian, so, which is a derivative.
Right. Not English, sorry.
Yeah, more a dialect of English.
Well, I grew up in Hawaii, so I know all about that kind of thing.
Fantastic.
So do you believe there is an awakening upon us?
Absolutely. Even from the more practical levels that you and I, for having this conversation, if we were doing it 300 years ago, we probably would have been burned at the stake.
Oh, for sure.
But ultimately, I think that there is awakening happening many, many, many different ways. When people like Jim Carrey get up and talk about consciousness, Russell Brand, all these people that have got notoriety from Hollywood, or they're now talking about consciousness. They're making statements. I saw an interview last night with Jerry Seinfeld and Jim Carrey in a show that Jerry Seinfeld's got now. And Jim Carrey can't resist but drop in little consciousness
the Cars
jokes.
and Coffee show?
Cars and Coffee.
Such a good show.
Yeah. So, you've got this stuff starting to hit mainstream. When I did the research for the Quantum Consciousness book, I found that even in the US, the percentage of people who are now open to the concept of reincarnation is above 50%. So, and you've got whole cultures in, the subcontinent, their whole society is based on reincarnation. You got the work of Ian Stevenson that he passed about 10 years ago, but Jim Tucker's still doing his work over at the University of Virginia. And, we're starting to talk to those guys from the Newton Institute with our own research team. You've got all of the stuff that's come out on near-death experiences. Evan Alexander's book, Anita Moorjani's book. All of this is starting to hit mainstream, and we have these incredible opportunities to, pull the conversation together to say, wow, what more is there and who are we really? And I think that, humanity is polarizing, Nora, and there are those that really just want to stay I don't want any of that stuff. I'm just happy with my 2 cars, my house, my holiday house, my high-paying job, my high taxes. I just want to stay in the system that I'm familiar with and comfortable with and have been successful with. But at the other end, there are people saying, this is not for me. I want to do a sea change or a tree change, or I can't be part of the corporate machine anymore and I've got to get out. And I think, people talk a lot about 2 earths, 2 humanities. It's two collective consciousness. Even though it's one, I can see it stretching in different directions. And we know which end we're at, and all your listeners are as well. The more of these conversations we can have, the more we put something into the collective that facilitates change for humanity. And we really, really need it.
I love it. Beautifully said. And I think there is definitely something very key in the in the coming together of life between lives, past lives, reincarnation, and the near-death experience piece, because Jen Catlin and I are also working on this from another angle, sort of in parallel universes ourselves. So it'll be interesting to see how that joins. But I mean, it's just sort of an obvious place where consciousness can bring forward this information that I think humanity is hungry for. And people are starting to develop they're starting to exhibit signs that the veil is thinning. So their superhuman characteristics, or what I say are like totally innate within us, are starting to come to the fore, and people are starting to recognize their gifts as actual gifts and not things that make them freakish or weird.
Yeah, not burdens. Every gift shows up as a burden until you really understand it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I'm seeing really fun, cool stuff, but of course the clients don't think so. I have a client who there are people, they'll just walk by her and she'll see their entire experience, and then she'll never see him again. She's like, why am I seeing this? I'm like, there's more we need to explore here.
Exactly.
Awesome. So where is your work heading next?
Well, we've been training quantum consciousness facilitators for some years now, and we wondered where we'd take it next. And if we look at how the universe, if I go back to that big infrastructure of energy and then consciousness and then awareness, I mean, ultimately everything in the universe is a vibration. Okay. And we have a term resonance, and resonance is something that means that everything is exactly as it's meant to be. And on occasion, something will fall out of resonance because its vibration changes and it emits a frequency that is in distress. So that may be a person, that may be a situation, that may be a planet. At the moment, I believe our planet is out of resonance, but a lot of people are working hard to bring it back into resonance. Mm-hmm. There's some of the vibrations around the frequencies that we're emitting around fear, anger, separation. All of that is something that holds us in distress. When we work with people in clinical practice under what we're calling universal consciousness, which is an extension of quantum work, we're not saying trauma. Well, we don't call it that. We see that it's simply a request for resonance.
A request for what?
A request for resonance.
Resonance.
So,
yeah.
So when something falls out of resonance, there's something to be learned. Mm-hmm. So what is this request for resonance trying to teach us? So if we no longer see trauma, if we no longer see difficulty, if we no longer see that we have to heal that, if we adopt a mindset that we simply facilitate somebody back to their resonance, and the learnings come and the wisdom comes, and it all drops away. Some of the techniques we're using are similar to near-death experiences that we've mentioned already. And when somebody leaves their body, they're in a greater aspect of their wisdom. They're no longer held back by the physical body, the human intellect, and we move them in. It's not like dissociating. It's not like saying, rise above your trauma and just float away from it so you don't feel it. It's like understanding it from a whole greater perspective that, at the end of the day, something is happening here that is simply the most beautiful sacred opportunity to learn. And once somebody moves beyond their body and they observe either what we call that emotional echo, that body echo, the wisdom simply comes. And as they move back into resonance, they come back into their present consciousness, if you like, and the distress is gone. Beautiful.
What does a session like that look like? Is it in a recliner? Is it on a table?
Yeah, look, it could be anything. We're trialing a lot of this stuff here, and we ran a 6-month course last year to teach people how to do some of this work. And they're doing it on an acupuncture table. They're doing it in a recliner. Some people are hypnotherapists. All of them are alternative health practitioners of different modalities. They can then come together under the philosophy of universal consciousness to offer some of these techniques to their existing client base. It's quite advanced work for practitioners. But ultimately, we're coming at it from the angle, Nora, is that nothing's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
These people simply have a request for resonance, and our role as the facilitator is to move them back into that resonance.
Do you find that it's that you have to help people just understand that concept before you can even get
Absolutely.
into the place of understanding resonance?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's like we've almost got to allow the present consciousness to understand what we're doing first, so that it lovingly surrenders to the experience.
Ooh, I'm so into it. I'm so interested. Sign me up, Pete.
Okay.
Well, do you have any last thoughts in our interview?
Yeah, look, I have the most amazing hope for humanity. The potential of us is something that we haven't even come close to uncovering, because we're buried under centuries of belief systems, cultural stuff that holds us back. We continue to reproduce that generation after generation after generation. In the quantum consciousness book, I map out what the world could look like if we had a different set of belief systems, and if we all came together under the one unique understanding that we're here as custodians of the planet. Every day we don't behave as custodians of the planet. We have big business that are raping and pillaging our oceans. They're chopping up Gaia, claiming that we need the minerals and the mines underneath. We're cutting down ancient rainforests. We're destroying the life in the oceans, and so many species have gone on the verge of extinction.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the media that permeates the world is not telling us the real story of what we really need to know.
Absolutely.
But if we look into our hearts, I mean, the answers aren't going to come from our wallets, and they're not going to come from our heads. They're going to come from our hearts. Gaia herself is a living organism, and we are merely the cells of her bodies. And it's the time that the cells started to behave differently, so that we can nurture her in ways that allow her to be sustained for generations to come. So, I mean, my summary is, the more conversations we can have like this one, the better it is for Gaia and for humanity, because, we are intricately connected to her.
Beautifully said. I love it. And I am so thrilled that you're here and talking about it. And I welcome you anytime. If there's something that you want to share, just let me know. Also, I'm going to be talking to you about how the heck I can get to Australia and take some quantum consciousness, because it sounds so cool. But I just want to thank you with all of my heart for coming on the show and being so forthcoming. And it's just wonderful. So thank you so much, Pete.
You're welcome, Nora.
All right.
And thanks for the opportunity. It's great to talk to your people.
Oh, awesome. Well, and I'll let you know how once the thing's on. Hold on. I'm going to sign off. Thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us on the experience. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what you think. And if you have ideas for other shows, or if you have particular questions, even if you have questions for Pete, I'm happy to relay them to him and get the answers back to you. All right.
Absolutely.
Until next time, take good care.